Apple. It's so much more than just a company, right? For a lot of people, it's a culture, it's a philosophy, it's even part of their identity. But how in the world did it become this global icon that inspires, well, a cult-like devotion? Today, we're going to sequence its DNA. We're going to find out exactly what makes Apple tick.
And the code? Well, it starts right here, with this core belief from Steve Jobs himself. This idea is really the master key to understanding everything else about Apple. It's not about the specs or the gigahertz. It's about making technology feel human, about creating something that, makes our hearts sing.
And that exact philosophy led to this. It's an almost unbelievable turnaround. Think about it. Back in 1996, Apple was literally months away from going bankrupt. Fast forward a couple of decades, and it becomes the world's first trillion-dollar company. That doesn't just happen by accident. That was the result of a very deliberate, very powerful inner guidance system.
So that's our big question for today. What is that inner guidance? What's the secret recipe, the source code, that lets a company not just survive, but completely redefine entire industries over and over again? Well, we're about to go on a little decoding mission to find out.
To do this, we're going to peel this thing back like an onion. Now, we're going to skip the surface layer. That's just how we all perceive Apple. We're diving straight into the middle layer, how the company actually works. And then we'll peel that back to find the absolute core, the invisible programming that runs the whole show.
Okay, so let's start with that middle layer. What's so interesting here is that Apple's playbook seems to break almost every single rule you'd learn in business school. It is a masterclass in doing the exact opposite of what you're told. The first rule they just throw out the window? Market research. Classic Business 101 says you need to obsess over your customers, listen to their feedback, but Apple's take is totally different. They believe that customers can't possibly tell you what they want if they've never seen it before. So instead of asking, Apple's whole game is to anticipate.
And then you've got product design. It's a complete 180 from what everyone else does. Most companies are in this endless race to pack in more features, more buttons, more everything. But at Apple, value isn't about the sum of all its functions. The real genius is in the ruthless, obsessive pursuit of simplicity. Their designers are actually proud of the features they managed to remove.
And this one's a big one. Failure. Traditional corporate culture is just built on avoiding mistakes at all costs, right? And that just leads to fear and playing it safe. But inside Apple's DNA, failure is treated like essential data. It's not the opposite of success, it's a totally necessary step on the path to success.
And look, here's a perfect example. Do you remember the Apple Pippin gaming console? Yeah, probably not. It was a huge flop. But the lessons Apple learned from failures like the Pippin or the Newton or the QuickTake camera, those became the bedrock, the foundation for the unbelievable successes of things like the iPhone and the iPad.
And finally, let's talk about competition. For most companies, the whole point is to beat the other guy, grab a bigger piece of the pie. But Apple, well, they're playing a completely different game. Their enemy isn't another company. It's the dominant design, the status quo, the boring, accepted way of doing things. They don't just want to win the game, they want to completely change the rules. So, okay, we've got all these counterintuitive, rule-breaking behaviors. But why? What's the source code that actually programs a company to think this way? To answer that, we have to peel back one more layer. We have to go looking for the ghost in the machine.
And this brings us to the inner layer. This is it, the core programming, the guiding philosophy that fuels everything else we've talked about. And it's way less about business strategy and much more about a fundamental way of seeing the world.
And at the absolute beating heart of Apple's DNA, we find this: Zen Buddhism. Seriously, Steve Jobs' deep, lifelong connection to Zen philosophy wasn't just some quirky personal interest. It became the invisible operating system for the entire company's approach to design, to focus, and its incredible trust in intuition over spreadsheets.
And you can literally see this influence. Just look at this. On the left, you have a traditional Japanese ink painting. It's all about minimalism, expressing a lot with very little. And on the right, the original iPod. Clean lines, a simple wheel, no clutter. It's the exact same aesthetic philosophy, just separated by centuries and technology.
So let's break this down. The first Zen principle is kanso. This is the whole idea of elegant simplicity, of expressing the absolute most with the absolute least. This directly explains why they don't pack in functions. Think about this single home button on the first iPhone, or that simple click wheel on the iPod. It's not just about looking clean. It's about a deep functional clarity that just feels right.
Next up is Coco. This principle is all about restraint, about having the discipline not to add something just because you can. This is the philosophy behind why Apple's designers are proud of what they get to eliminate. It's the courage to do things like remove the floppy drive or the headphone jack, because they believe that by removing the clutter, you achieve a higher, more powerful form of focus.
And finally, there's Mushin, which you can think of as no mind. Now, this is the source of that incredible trust and intuition. It's about a kind of unforced creativity that isn't tied down by analytics or focus groups. It's the deep belief that the biggest breakthroughs come from an internal vision, not from asking people what they want. This is why Apple doesn't do market research. They trust their gut to anticipate.
So after peeling back all those layers, from the business practices all the way down to the core philosophy, what's the big takeaway here? How can we actually use this decoded DNA? Here's the most important thing to get. Apple's secret isn't a business plan you can just copy and paste. It's a worldview. It's the core belief that the ultimate goal isn't just to make products, but to create meaning. It all comes back to that relentless fusion of technology and the humanities to create things that, well, make our hearts sing.
And these are the genes from that code that we can all learn from. Dare to explore new territory. Understand that failure is just a stepping stone to success. Be your own toughest critic. Design things you would absolutely love to use. Remember that the real enemy is the status quo, not your competition. And through it all, always keep the ultimate goal in sight.
Which really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Whether it's in your job, your industry, or even just your own creative projects, what's the accepted way of doing things that's just begging for a new perspective? What's the dominant design in your world that's waiting for you to break it?